So if we take sovereignty from a really basic definition of the authority of a country to govern itself, I think all EU member states would agree on that simple understanding. But where they diverge and where there is often divergence between Britain and the rest of the EU member states is how that sovereignty is exercised. So historically, the UK exercises an understanding around the Westminster model and power, ultimate supreme power, being located at Westminster. There's also the idea or the principle that once a decision has been made by Parliament, it can be overruled by a future Parliament. The exercising of sovereignty in other EU member states is slightly more multidimensional. EU member states have a history of constitutional change. France, for example, had 3 constitutions in existence throughout the 20th century. So you see there very different ideas or very different examples of how sovereignty can be exercised, how it can actually play out. You add into that mix that Britain is incredibly centralised and some other EU member states are more decentralised, and that introduces more players into the decision-making process. So sovereignty can be exercised at numerous different levels and can include numerous different individuals. It then doesn't take a massive leap of imagination for countries to think, well, actually you can pool some sovereignty and there can be a more flexible understanding of it. Whereas in the UK, the devolution process and the dilution of sovereignty has only really come since 1997. And there is still this obsession of power and ultimate power lying within Westminster. So across the EU, in the policy areas that the EU has a competence, most member states have pooled sovereignty. There are exceptions, Ireland, Denmark, Sweden and the UK. But the UK stands out as being the member state that has the most opt-outs. It's the most reluctant to pool sovereignty. Within the UK, this is not the case. This particular position or idea is not one that's shared by the British political elite. Rather, they argue that sovereignty should be and remain within the Westminster system, and that actually the way to solve global problems is not so much at the regional level, but actually at the global level. So there is a tension and a difference there, and the UK is by no means an exception, but it stands out as the awkward partner. So since the end of the Second World War, the global economy has changed and power has become less centred on national governments. It's moved upwards to the regional level and it's moved downwards to the local level. In the context of the UK, we see that understanding or its understanding of parliamentary sovereignty hasn't changed at all. It's still hooked into this historic understanding that Westminster reigns supreme, despite the fact that the world around it has actually changed.